here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. It has been 60 days of a complete siege on the Gaza Strip, beginning on March 2nd, when Israel closed the crossings and blocked the entry of food, fuel, medicine, medical equipment, and other basic essentials. Bombings and airstrikes have continued nonstop, killing dozens of Palestinians every day. Since Israel broke the so-called ceasefire and resumed its relentless massacres on March 18th, more than 2,300 Palestinians have been killed and nearly 6,000 have been injured, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza. The official death toll since October 2023 is 52,000, the ministry reports, with thousands more still buried and unaccounted for under the rubble. Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud reported that on Wednesday, April 30th, massive explosions rocked the central and northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza, 3 separate overnight attacks hit residential buildings with people inside. Quote, "Those who survived the attack described it as an earthquake that shattered the entire building," Mahmoud said. In one building, 8 were killed in a single attack. Emergency workers are still looking for more. The number of people killed is expected to rise as more family members are still looking for their loved ones. Israeli attacks have intensified across northern Gaza and in Al-Mawasi and other areas southwest of Khan Yunis, where displaced Palestinian families have sheltered in makeshift encampments and buildings. This video is from Khan Yunis on Tuesday. The United Nations Human Rights Office stated that between March 18th and April 27th, there were 259 Israeli attacks on residential buildings and 99 on the tents of displaced people. Quote, "Most of the attacks resulted in fatalities, including of women and children," the UN said, and among the strikes on tents, 40 reportedly took place in Al-Mawasi, in Khan Yunis, where the Israeli army repeatedly directed civilians to seek refuge. On Monday, April 28th, an Israeli drone attack killed 9 people, including 5 children in Gaza City. Dr. Munir al-Bursh, the director of the health ministry in Gaza, said that a pregnant woman was shot in the head by an Israeli drone that same day. He stated that medical teams at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City were able to deliver the baby via C-section, but the mother remained in critical condition. Last Thursday, April 24th, Palestinian journalists captured a video of a small child, later identified as 6-year-old Ali Faraj, who survived the bombing of his family's home in Gaza City. Due to the high impact of the bomb, Ali was thrown onto a neighboring roof, as was his father and one of his little sisters. Ali called out for help beside the dead bodies of his father and sister. His 5-year-old sister, who was wearing a pink dress, was torn in half. The Anadolu news agency reported that Ali's mother, Nuha, was frantically searching for him beneath the rubble of their destroyed house and did not know that he had landed on the roof of the house next door. Her husband and their daughters, Zaina, Leen, Razan, Suad, and Juri, aged between 2 and 14 years old, were all killed in the attack. A reporter from the news agency visited Ali Faraj at the Kuwaiti hospital in Gaza, where he was receiving treatment for a severe abdominal injury. The boy said, quote, "The walls collapsed and I fell. I don't know what happened. I was with my dad. Then there was a huge explosion." Here's a video of an interview with Ali's mother Nuha. I'll summarize what she said afterwards.
نهى محمود شحاته ام علي فرج. اللي صار انا كنت في المطبخ، صار انفجار، بعمل مكرونه للاولاد وقهوه لاخويا، وانا عمال بصب في القهوه لصار انفجار قوي كتير. وانا كنت واقفه وقعت، حسيت اشي ردم فوقي. قلت شهدت، انا فكرت حالي بدي اموت. بعدين رفعت الردم، بعدين رحت أشوف، ما لقيتش حيطان، ما لقيتش عفش، ما لقيتش حدا، نادي عليهم ما حدش برد. الحمد لله نزلت على الدرج، شفت ابني عليه، قلت له أشاور له يما هيني واللي ما تخافش. كان في شباب طالعين على الدرج، قلت لهم ابني هي على السطح روحوا جيبوه عايش. وانا عشان ظهري حرق رحت جبت الاسعاف ورحت، وابني اخذوه الشباب.
علي الوحيد اللي نجا؟
اه هو الوحيد من تقريبا 22 واحد، انا وياه طلعنا. كنا معظمهم اطفال الموجودين، اخوي اولاده، اختي اولادها، وجوزي واولادي، محمد ابن عم، كلهم راحوا.
That was 𝐓𝐿 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜. She said that she was in the kitchen making coffee when there was an explosion. She got out from under pieces of rubble and went looking for her family members. There were no walls, no furniture, and no one, she said. She saw Ali on the roof and cried for some men nearby to retrieve him. He was the only survivor, beside herself, of 22 people, mostly children, including her nieces and nephews. Quote, "My son Mohammed was playing. They're all gone," she said at the end. Palestinians in Gaza endured yet another week of Israel's engineered starvation policy and the total collapse of infrastructure, as more than 90% of people across the Strip remain forcibly displaced. Sandstorms blew in on Wednesday, compounding an already dire situation for displaced Palestinians. The World Food Programme stated on April 27th that all of its food stocks are depleted, forcing the closure of all of its supported bakeries and cutting off access to bread for 800,000 people. Quote, "Food parcels are fully exhausted, and the last remaining supplies have been delivered to hot meal kitchens, which are expected to run out within days," the WFP stated. The United Nations says that its partners, including the World Food Programme, quote, "have pre-positioned over 171,000 metric tons of food in the region, ready for delivery as soon as the restrictions on the entry of supplies imposed by the Israeli authorities since March 2nd are lifted. This amount is enough to sustain the entire population of about 2.1 million people for 3 to 4 months. People's coping strategies have been stretched to the limit, the UN adds. Widespread displacement has forced many people to abandon food supplies and emergency stocks secured during the ceasefire. Amjad Shawa, the director of the Palestinian Non-Governmental Organizations Network in Gaza, told Reuters news agency that of the 70 to 80 community kitchens still working in Gaza, in just a matter of days they could be forced to close. 15 have already closed earlier this week, he said. The Gaza Health Ministry said that at least 60,000 children are now showing symptoms of malnutrition. Juliette Touma, the spokesperson for the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, said this week that, quote, "The siege on Gaza is the silent killer of children, of older people. Families, whole families, 7 or 8 people, are resorting to sharing 1 can of beans or peas," she told journalists in Geneva. "Imagine not having anything to feed your children. Children in Gaza are going to bed starving." In addition to the food, medicine, and water catastrophe, the fuel situation is rapidly deteriorating. The United Nations stated on Tuesday that with accessible benzene nearly depleted and diesel reserves critically low, remaining fuel is being prioritized for health, water, sanitation, and telecommunications services to sustain life-saving operations. Quote, "Humanitarian partners have made repeated attempts to retrieve fuel from areas that are currently inaccessible, either because they are under active displacement orders or located in so-called no-go zones that require humanitarians to coordinate with Israeli authorities," the UN Humanitarian Office stated. However, efforts to access these areas are routinely denied. The Gaza Civil Defense Corps warned on Monday, April 28th, that because of the lack of fuel, 8 out of their 12 rescue vehicles, including firefighting and ambulance trucks, are unable to operate. The Gaza municipality this week reported that they have been forced to dump waste in the middle of Gaza City because Israeli forces have prevented sanitation crews from reaching the main dump east of the city for 18 months. 260,000 tons of waste are accumulating in landfills and on city streets and are creating a health and environmental disaster, the municipality said. 10 Palestinian detainees were released from Israeli jails this week and returned to Gaza. Al Jazeera's Tarek Abu Azoum reported on April 29th that the detainees were in desperate physical and psychological condition. Quote, they have reported horrific ways of torture that they endured in the Israeli detention camps and centers, saying the condition of Palestinian detainees and prisoners is horrific and inhumane, calling for immediate protection for them and urging people to keep praying for them, Abu Azoum stated. Among the released detainees was Asad al-Nasasra, the sole survivor of the Israeli military ambush and attack on a group of paramedics and ambulance drivers in late March. As we reported, 14 rescue workers and 1 UN worker were summarily executed by Israeli soldiers, and their bodies were dumped into a mass pit. The ambulances were also buried. Al-Nasasra spent 37 days in Israeli detention and has yet to speak publicly about his experience witnessing and surviving the massacre. We've published many features on the Electronic Intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight excerpts of Empty Markets and Desperate Parents by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐿, writing from Gaza. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 *writes that, quote, Sheikh Radwan Market, west of Gaza City, looks like a ghost town. Broken stalls, shuttered shops, and sunken, hungry eyes dominate a place that was once teeming with life. Israel's latest ban on allowing food, water, fuel, electricity, and medicine into 2 million people into the Gaza Strip is nearly at its 2-month mark. And as famine rears its head again in Gaza, desperation is setting in. Markets are empty of food, medicines are scarce, and prices are rising. In a pharmacy near the market, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, 32 years old, was asking for a package of formula milk for his youngest child. I went to 3 pharmacies this morning and couldn't find any type of infant formula, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 told the Electronic Intifada. His search at Sheikh Radwan Market proved equally fruitless, and even if it hadn't, he said, prices have become exorbitant. He was left despairing about the impact on his children's health. On April 27th, the UN's World Food Program announced that it had run out of food in Gaza, 54 days after Israel imposed the total blockade. That blockade is now being challenged by the UN at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Israel remains unrepentant. Responding to the ICJ hearing, Israel's Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, described the UN's protest against its blockade as part of a, quote, systematic persecution. The UN has become a rotten anti-Israel and anti-Semitic body, Sa'ar declared on April 28th. In Gaza, there is little time for such genocidal grandstanding. Samar al-Tawil, a mother of 4, stood in front of an empty stall trying to secure rice at less than exorbitant prices. I can no longer tell my children that what they want is unavailable. They keep crying, and their father and I are powerless to find a solution, she said. Those are excerpts from Empty Markets and Desperate Parents by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, writing from Gaza on electronicintifada.net. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces shot and killed a 16-year-old Palestinian boy in the northern occupied West Bank city on April 25th. According to Defense for Children International Palestine, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐿 was shot in the chest by Israeli soldiers while he was closing up the shop where he worked after Israeli forces began carrying out a military incursion into the town of Salem at about 3:30 in the afternoon. Ayed Abu Aktesh, Accountability Program Director at DCIP, said, quote, Israeli forces are relentlessly targeting Palestinian children from Nablus to Jerusalem to Gaza without a moment of reprieve. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 was clearly no threat to Israeli soldiers, and yet they fatally shot him anyway, And as usual, no one will be held accountable for killing a Palestinian child in cold blood. How many Palestinian children's bodies is enough for the world to enact sanctions on Israel and force accountability? Israeli forces have killed 24 Palestinian children in the occupied West Bank in 2025, the children's rights group stated. Activist and journalist Bassel Adra filmed this video of Israeli bulldozers destroying homes and water wells in Masafar Yatta, near Hebron in the southern West Bank. Local news sources say that these demolitions are part of a series of intensifying attacks by the Israeli army and their settler foot soldiers on the villages in Masafar Yatta. Settlers have routinely vandalized and destroyed homes and farmland in the area and are working to expand illegal colonial outposts. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers set fire to Palestinian agricultural land and stabbed a Palestinian man in the town of Duma, near Nablus, on April 30th. The attack came as huge fires rapidly spread across the Jerusalem hills, reaching Israeli occupation forces bases and prompting Israel to request international assistance, Wafa news agency reported. In Jenin, Israeli forces raided and ransacked the family home of veteran journalist Ali Samoudi on April 29th at 5 a.m, then detained, interrogated, and arrested him. The Israeli army said that because of a deterioration in his health, Samoudi was being transferred to an Israeli hospital. Samoudi's family said that Israeli authorities had not told them the name of the hospital where he was being treated or any other details, but that he is expected to be brought before a military court next week. Samoudi, who has reported from Jenin for decades and contributed to local and international outlets, was working alongside Al Jazeera correspondent Shireen Abu Akleh when she was assassinated by an Israeli sniper nearly 3 years ago. He was also shot in the shoulder during that attack on journalists. Finally, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Palestine. Musician and music teacher Ahmed Mouin regularly films himself and his students singing, playing music, and trying to alleviate the trauma through his project, Gaza Birds Singing. On Wednesday, he posted this video with the following caption: "A child's smile is stronger than war. Every time I see a child smile amidst the destruction, I forget all the pain I've lived. That small smile is my strength. It's the light that keeps me going no matter what." With my team Gaza Birds Singing, we chose to fight war with music, turning the cries of displacement into songs of love and peace. From inside the refugee camps, we plant joy on children's faces. We sing, we dance, we create real moments of happiness, even if just for a little while, Mouin said.
Hi everyone, today we have new students. We're going to build new groups to teach them instruments and singing. We're going to show you. Love you.
That was musician and music teacher Ahmed Mouin. That's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza.